The road through ash and dust. The wind came down like judgment across the jagged canyons east of Sierra Verde, hissing through the scrub and kicking dust into the sky until the horizon blurred like a torn map. It wasn't just wind, it was punishment. The kind of wind that didn't simply blow through a place but tried to erase it altogether. Every mile of that plain felt like it had been carved by God's anger and left behind to forget how to grow. Under a blood-hued sun that hung low and heavy like a watchful eye, Elia's cane rode on. His hat was pulled low, the brim crusted in salt and dirt, his long coat stitched and restitched along the shoulders and wrists from years of rough weather and harder choices. He moved like a man chased not by riders, but by memory, the kind that never ran out of breath. His horse, Juniper, limped on a bruised front leg stone hit, or worse. Elia didn't speak to the gelding anymore, not out of cruelty, but because he'd long since run out of words for things that couldn't answer back. The last town he'd passed through wasn't really a town at all, just a sad crossroads where a drunk priest offered blessings to the dirt, and a postmaster was 2 days from death, but still wore a tie. That had been 9 days back. Now the lard was gone, the carbolic acid half drunk, and the stink from his leg told him something was rotting inside him. He didn't know if he'd make another 9. He didn't care. The plains didn't offer mercy, only silence, and silence was what he'd earned. The cabin of rot and rain. The fever crept in when the sun dipped and the cold came crawling. It whispered under his skin like something with teeth curling around the wound just beneath his thigh muscle, raw, angry, and pulsing like a second vengeful heart. A rancher's son had put a bullet there 3 weeks ago, mistaking Elia for a cattle thief. The kid had screamed when Elia's boot knife kissed his cheek, but Elia had let him live. That was mercy, he figured. Mercy spent. Now every night the pain came like a ghost, whispering in the dark, hollowing him out from the inside. Fires had to be quick, just enough to warm the stones and boil creek water. Coyotes circled sometimes, their eyes yellow and understanding. He didn't fear them. He respected them. They survived on what was left behind. So did he. When he found the half-collapsed cabin, it wasn't hope he felt, just pause. 4 standing logs, sagging roof, mouse nests where dreams used to live. He tied Juniper to a stump and circled the ruin, twice pistol drawn. Nothing but the stink of wild onion and old rot. No fresh tracks. No prints but his. He stayed 3 days cleaned. The wound dug a shallow pit to catch rain. On the 4th, a storm rolled in like a black curtain, angry and full of teeth. Thunder snarled across the sky. Elia hunkered down and the dirt pistol pressed to his ribs. That's when she appeared like a ghost flung from fire, soaked through barefoot hair, matted and face streaked with blood. She didn't knock. Just stumbled into the cabin and dropped to her knees before the fire like it was a church altar. She didn't ask for mercy, and he didn't offer it. Theft, decision, and Juniper's end. She hadn't said much that night, sat like a penitent, hands in her lap, fingers twitching like they remembered pain. When Elia rose slow, his legs screaming, she didn't flinch. He tossed her a piece of jerky. She caught it, said nothing. In the morning, she was gone. So was his horse. Juniper, ridden hard and careless. The storm had turned the earth to a black mire, making her trail easy even for a wounded man. He followed. Not out of revenge, not yet. Just movement. The kind of movement men make when they've got nothing else. His leg throbbed like the earth itself was punishing him for trusting anything with eyes again. He told himself he'd kill her when he caught up, but he hadn't truly decided. Not yet. He found her by sundown at the edge of a ravine. Juniper was down, frothing leg torn by barbed wire, half buried in the mud. Ghost fencing, a snare set by no one still living. She knelt beside him, stroking his mane, her face unreadable. When she looked up, there was no fear, just that hollow look of people who've stopped caring whether they breathe. "I was bringing him back," she said soft. Elia didn't answer right away, just looked at the leg ruined, raw, bleeding life. "He's done," he said finally. She nodded. "I know." He raised the pistol. Not at her, at the horse. "Pull the trigger." The silence that followed was worse than the thunder had been. He turned and limped back toward the ruin. She followed quiet, barefoot, no excuses. Like a stray, unsure if she'd been forgiven. He didn't speak to her, not that night, not the next. But something inside him had shifted like a lock turning slow and deep. The unspoken pact. The third night brought no words, only firelight and the sound of her threading a bone needle through a tear in her coat. She didn't ask for the needle, didn't ask for anything. Just found where he kept it and went to work like someone used to repairing what the world had ripped open. Elia watched from across the fire leg throbbing pistol under his arm. He'd slept with it like a child once clutched a stuffed bear long before the world taught him not to trust anything that could bleed. She didn't try to talk. He didn't either. That more than anything built something between them, a space not of words but silence made sacred by pain. By the fourth day she stood over the fire, boiling water, her silhouette sharp against the morning haze. "You're going to lose that leg if you don't cut out the rot," she said, not looking at him. Elia stared at her a long time. She didn't flinch, didn't elaborate, just kept stirring. "I've done it before," she added. Her voice didn't carry pride, only memory. "Who was he?" he asked. She shook her head. "No one now." That answer settled something in him, not trust, nothing that fragile, but acceptance. He didn't say yes. Didn't need to. She laid out her tools that night, a heated blade, a bottle of whiskey, old cloth torn into strips. When she told him to bite down, he did. No words. No prayers. Just the sound of metal meeting infection and the scream of a man who'd run out of choices. Wakened to a fire. Tended. The fever didn't take him. Neither did the pain. When he opened his eyes 3 days later, the world had stopped spinning, his leg wrapped in boiled cloth, his skin slick with sweat and the fire still warm beside him. But more than that, she was still there. Not packing, not running, just watching, tending the flames like she'd been waiting for him to come back from the other side. She didn't say anything, just handed him a tin cup of creek water and turned back to her work. Elia drank. It tasted like ash and stone, but it tasted. He was alive. Outside, the storm had broken. The sky was still gray, but the sun pressed through like a forgotten sheriff, surveying a lawless town. The wind whispered now instead of screamed. Birds called from the broken eaves. She moved through the ruin like she'd been born there, patching holes with wax, reusing rusted nails to hang shelves that sagged but held. She turned a squirrel's nest into kindling and repurposed an old tin basin into a water pail. Elia didn't help. Couldn't yet, but he watched. Not just her hands, but the way she moved, quiet, precise, without waste. She didn't talk about staying. Neither did he. But neither of them left. The language of healing. His leg healed slowly the way mountains erode inch by inch under pressure. She cleaned it twice a day with cloth boiled until it bled steam. Once she brought a paste made of crushed herbs, green, pungent and wild. "What's in it?" he asked. "What grows near poison," she replied. It stung like truth. He didn't ask again. She never questioned where he came from, never wondered aloud about the bullet or the life before the wound. He returned the favor. Their pasts became sacred by omission. One morning he woke to find her sharpening a knife by the fire, the rhythmic drag of stone on steel steady as breath. She was humming. Low, sad. Could have been a hymn. Could have been a memory. He watched her a long time before she noticed. When she did, she didn't stop. "You snore," she said. "So leave," he grunted. She didn't. Later, she took his rifle and walked into the brush. He thought she'd left again. But by dusk, she returned a brace of rabbits on one shoulder, a rusted trap in her hand. "Found this buried in the mud," she said. "Almost stepped in it." The trap was still dangerous, teeth rusted but sharp enough to break a foot. She cleaned the rabbits while he opened and shut the trap with the spine of his knife. "Who leaves something like that behind?" she asked. Elia met her eyes. "The kind of people who stop needing food." She didn't reply, but after that he started marking her trails with stone towers and red cloth. A sign for him. A language made of warning, not invitation. "Men are coming." The first time she said it, she didn't raise her voice. Just crouched behind a dead oak rifle cradled in her arms and whispered, "They're coming." Elia hobbled beside her, still not whole, but standing. From their bluff they saw the three riders, small at first like crows circling a carcass. But they weren't circling. They were closing. One wore a red coat, tattered but bright. Another had a patch over his eye. The third was bald, holding a long-barreled pistol across his lap like a sleeping child. They didn't rush. They didn't scan the horizon. They moved like they'd done this before. Like they had time. Too much time. "Friends of yours?" Elia asked. She shook her head slowly. "Then how do you know they're coming here?" he said. She didn't answer that, just stood, dusted her hands, and said, "We need to move." Her tone wasn't panicked. It wasn't even afraid. It was absolute. Trail of ash and blood. They left the next morning without speaking. Each knowing silence packed lighter than explanations. She led them east toward a low outcrop beneath a rock overhang hidden from the wind. No one spoke of how she knew it was there. She pointed at the blackened fire pit already set in the stone. Charcoal, long cold. Ghosts had passed through here. Maybe ones like them. Maybe worse. The first night under the overhang, they didn't sleep deep. Elia dozed with his back against the wall and one hand on the pistol in his lap. She stayed awake, knife on her thigh, gaze flicking at every sound in the dark. By morning, she was gone. But the rifle remained. Elia waited, tended the fire, ate cold rabbit and drank the last of the boiled water. One day passed, then another. On the third morning, he left the overhang and returned to the ruined cabin. What he found there turned his stomach colder than the dawn. 3 sets of boot prints in the ash. Not hers. Deep, broad-soled, fresh. Blood on the wall, a smear, maybe a tooth. Bedrolls cut open, fire stomped out. The place desecrated like a church burned in secret. No one tried to cover their tracks. So he followed. Blood smoke and vengeance. They hadn't even tried to hide their trail. That was arrogance or confidence. Either would get a man killed. Elia tracked them through gullies and dry ravines up past ridgelines where the trees twisted like they'd tried to crawl away. By dusk, he found them, camped below the bluff. A fire crackled between three men. One drank from a dented canteen. Another squatted over a coiled snake blade in hand. And her Sal was tied to a post, barefoot, face bloodied, her hair tangled, one eye swollen shut. But when she saw him, her shoulders rose just slightly. A signal, not hope, not plea, just recognition. Enough. Elia waited. Let the firelight lull them. Let the whiskey dull their edges. When the sun died, he moved, like smoke, like memory. The first man never made a sound. Elia's knife cut his throat with the precision of a butcher. The second turned too late, got a shot off but too high. Elia put 2 bullets in his chest before the echo faded. The third patch came out from the dark blade slashing. He was younger, faster, stronger, but Elia had fought with no afterlife. They grappled in the dirt. Elia lost his pistol, dug into his belt. Boot knife found ribs, once, twice, a third time. Patchy went limp. Elia didn't look at the blood, just moved to her, cut her loose. Her voice was hoarse. "Took your time," she muttered. He said nothing. They burned the bodies, sat by the ashes until the wind rose. Then she said, "They weren't after me." He turned. "They were after you." Truths by firelight. They didn't speak for a long time after the killing. Just let the fire crackle low while the smoke rose into the wind, like prayers neither of them believed in. Sal sat with her knees pulled tight to her chest, her face a mask of bruises and drying blood. But her eyes, those didn't blink, didn't break. Elia stared into the coals. Let them speak for him. Then, as the last of the bodies turned to cinder, she said, "They weren't after me." Her voice was raw, stripped down to marrow. He turned slowly, face unreadable. What were they after then? She didn't look at him. They said your name. One of them did. Said you left a man dead in Rio. Took something that wasn't yours. I took a horse. Elia said, voice low. Was it his no? But he drew first. She smiled, just a little. A crooked thing. Mean. I guess we're both being followed. He didn't respond, just looked into the fire again. And somehow that said everything. The land that forgot names. They left the next morning again without words. Something had shifted in the dirt between them, an understanding that whatever followed would follow both, together or not. The land around them changed too. Flattened. Dried. The grasses thinned and the trees leaned like drunks in search of shade that no longer came. They rode 2 of the dead men's horses. She picked the one with a chipped hoof, said it reminded her of a dog she once had. He didn't ask what happened to the dog. They moved northeast through a land hungry for loss. The rivers were no more than scars in the earth, brittle veins that once held life. They drank from frost-covered leaves when they could, shared the same silence, but now it felt chosen, not forced. One morning Sal showed him something from her coat pocket, a cracked compass. The glass was chipped, the needle stuck, yet she looked at it like it still mattered. That won't help us, Elia said. It's not for help, she answered. It's for remembering which way is away. He didn't ask away from what. By now, he understood. The Valley of Forgotten Fire. By the end of the second week, they reached a valley knotted with black pines and rusted remnants of old mining shafts, broken teeth sticking from the soil. Sal stood at the edge and said, "We can stop here." Elia squinted toward the horizon. "Why no one follows through places like this," she said. "And the earth still holds something. I can feel it." They found a shack half collapsed, leaning east like it was tired of standing. The other half, though, still stood. Barely. The roof sagged and moaned in the wind, but it was honest sound. Elia liked that. They fixed it together, day by day. She patched holes with brush and river mud. He filled cracks with moss and stone. She carved hinges from rawhide and sealed the window with wire from a busted telegraph line. She didn't smile often, but when she got the fireplace to draw without choking the room in smoke, she did. Once. It looked like sunlight filtered through prison bars, quick, soft, and almost holy. Weeks passed. The outside world thinned. No bullets. No hooves. No breath but theirs. They planted onions, beans, tobacco, things that could take a beating and grow anyway. Resilient things. Like them. Ghosts, traps, and the language of silence. They rarely spoke of staying, but neither of them left. Their days became patterns, quiet, deliberate. Sal rose early, checking the traps she'd set near the creek bed, always coming back with something: a ground squirrel, a rabbit, once even a half-dead hawk that she nursed like it was a wounded child. Elia woke later, hunted what he could, fixed the roof, fletched arrows from fallen pine limbs. The routine didn't need words to survive. One night, over bitter coffee that could have stripped paint, Sal spoke without looking up. "You ever wonder what it would have been like to live before all this?" He stared at the fire. Before guns, before mines, before men tried to outshoot their ghosts. Yeah, just land, fire, food. He sipped the coffee. That land never existed. People always cut each other, just used sharper rocks. She chuckled, a rare sound, low and crooked. First time he'd heard it. "You're probably right." He looked at her. "But you don't survive out here by being right, just by being left." She didn't answer that. Just let the silence return, let it settle like moss on bone. The girl she left behind. The frost came early that year, biting the valley with teeth sharp and fast. Wood had to be split daily. The fire never slept. Everything became motion without waste. Rise, hunt, patch, cook, sleep. One morning she brought back a young buck clean shot through the eye. Elia skinned it and paused when he saw the old scars in the meat. "He's been hunted before," he muttered. She shrugged. He was alone. That night under stars so clear they hurt to look at, she told him about the first man she ever killed. She was 14. A man came through her uncle's land asking for whiskey and favors. Her uncle gave him both. The man stayed. Lingered too long. Took too much. One night, she said, voice level, I heated the cattle brand. Pressed it to his face while he slept. Elia didn't speak, just listened. He screamed, she added. I slit his throat before he could finish. My uncle chased me halfway through the desert. What happened? I didn't kill him, but I shot his horse. The heat did the rest. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. Just stared into the fire like it might answer something. Elia passed her the last strip of deer meat and poured 2 fingers of whiskey. That was their communion. Fault and the knock at midnight. The dog came a week later, ribs showing one ear-torn coat matted with old mud and blood. Sal found him limping through the ravine. He's already been down, she said when Elia suggested putting it out of its misery. They named him Fault. He took to Sal, quickly sleeping near her bedroll, circling Elia with silent curiosity. Within days, he followed her everywhere. At night, he lay by the fire with his nose to the door. Then one night he howled. Not barked, not whimpered. Howled long, low, and cracked like old timber. Elia snapped awake. Sal was already crouched by the fire, knife drawn. The flames had died down to embers. The wind had stopped. Then came the knock. Once, slow, then again, then a third time. "That's no lost rider," Sal whispered. Elia moved to the window. No moon, no light, just a shape tall, unmoving like it had been carved from the night. "Name yourself," he called. No answer. Then the voice came. "You took something from my brother." Sal's voice tight. "Which one, Elia? What brother? The one with the patch. The one who rode with Mercer." That name froze the air. Sal closed her eyes. "Mercer's men don't let things go." "Neither do I," Elia muttered. He opened the door and fired once emptiness. Just smoke, then laughter from the trees, cold, dry, inhuman. "We leave before sunrise," he said. She nodded, but the sound of that laugh would stay with them both long after the snow came. We could have stayed. By the time dawn came, the valley lay still, blanketed in fresh snow, chimney smoke rising like thread through the cold air. Elia stood outside the cabin they'd patched together, coat pulled tight, eyes on the tree line. Beside him, Sal adjusted the saddle straps in silence. Fault waited, tail low, ears twitching toward the north. "I could have stayed," Elia muttered. "So could I," she said softly. They didn't speak again, just mounted and rode east. Behind them the smoke faded. The snow covered the fire pit. What remained of that cabin became part of the land again, like a scar buried under new skin. But something else had shifted too. The wilds hadn't changed. The danger still lived in the horizon, but they had changed. Every mile they rode now felt tighter, heavier, like something behind them still had claws. The ground turned dry, then brittle. Plateaus of cracked earth stretched as far as they could see. Even the crows circled higher, wings wide, but unwilling to descend. Elia said nothing, but he knew this country knew it too well. It was land no map marked, where law turned to whispers, and ghosts became real again. The town that never was. On the third day they found it, what had once tried to be a town and failed. 5 buildings, mostly timber and rust. One had caved in completely. Another leaned like a drunk in prayer. At the center, a chapel sunken deep into its foundation, its steeple snapped in half. The sign out front read Marlowe, but the paint had peeled into streaks like a scream in the rain. Fault sniffed every doorway, but wouldn't step near the chapel. That was enough for Sal. They made camp inside the general store. Its shelves long picked clean, but the walls thick enough to keep out the wind. That night, Sal unfolded a battered piece of paper. A hand-drawn map creased at the corners, ink faded by time. Elia leaned in close. She pointed to a place west of a river bend. "Here." He squinted. "Unsafe." "Not safe," she said. "Just hidden." "Whose mark is that?" he asked, pointing to the red thumbprint beside it. "Mine." He stared at her, searching for something in her face. She didn't flinch. "I went there once. Long ago. Thought maybe I'd turn myself in." "Why didn't you?" She looked down at the map. "They wouldn't have taken me alive." Elia didn't ask what she meant by they. He already knew. The settlement in the Red Gulch. The next day brought wind like rusted knives. They wrapped scarves across their faces, eyes squinting against the dust. Fault walked beside them, ears back head, low growling at things that weren't there. By dusk, they saw it smoke. Not campfire smoke, chimney smoke, thick, steady, civilized. The trail led down into a gulch walled in red rock. One road in, none out. Sal stared down at it from the ridge. "No," she whispered. Elia narrowed his eyes. "You know it." She hesitated. "Old, just buried deep." They covered the horses in netting and brush, then moved on foot. Fault followed tense and silent. 15 buildings arranged in a tight circle. Children played in the dust. Women stirred pots over open flame. Men sat on porches with rifles across their knees. This wasn't a town, it was a compound. A place with walls made of rules and secrets. "Miners," Sal said under her breath, "but not for ore." Elia nodded. "Opium, guns, maybe both." They circled the edge and didn't linger. As they climbed back up to the ridge, Elia said, "You've been here before." She didn't deny it. "Someone offered me a place. I declined. Why they wanted a piece of me, that was all," she said. But it was enough. The wagon and the burnt earth. They rode south from the gulch through a canyon that twisted like a blade's throat. The path narrowed, hemmed in by cliffs tall enough to block out the sun. The air turned strange, thick with the scent of soot and old metal. Even Fault grew restless, snapping his head to every shadow, growling at the wind. Then came the smell, acrid bitter, the unmistakable reek of burnt blood and gunpowder. Elia dismounted, first moving low with his rifle in hand. Sal followed close, blade drawn. They rounded the bend and found what was left of the wagon. Split in two. One wheel still turned in the breeze. The other had been blown clean off. A child's doll lay face down in the gravel, half melted from fire. Its eye was missing. Its smile was warped. Around it 6 bodies. 2 men, 1 woman, 3 small shapes, too still to mistake for anything but what they were. Sal didn't speak. She just knelt. Elia bent and touched the nearest boot print, broad, sharp-heeled, deep. "Still warm," he muttered. Sal rose slowly, her face turned to stone. "They want more than you now." He looked at her. "They want you." She nodded. "Once. We end it." Smoke and reckoning. They backtracked north, no longer caring about the trail. Fault picked up the scent fast, nose to the ground, pace quick and lean. By dusk they crested a ridge and spotted them 4 men in a tight camp, a fire burning too bright, too loud. Arrogant. Sal crouched low. "Take the left." Elia shook his head. "I take them all. You cover the fire." She opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. She knew when a man wasn't asking. He moved like a ghost through fog. The first man didn't even stand. Elia's knife found his chest before he drew breath. The second turned just in time to scream. Elia's bullet took his tongue. The third ran behind a rock. Sal dropped him with a shot to the knee, then walked up and slit his throat with the same blade she used to clean fish. The last man bolted. Fault hit him mid-stride, teeth to ankle, dragging him down like he weighed nothing. When it was done, Elia stood in the smoke blood on his hands, breath hard. Sal moved beside him, face unreadable. "Not Mercer," she said. Elia nodded. "Not yet. The letter and the name." They buried the bodies, quick, shallow graves marked with rocks and curses. Sal rifled through the coat of one man, pulled free a folded piece of paper. Her eyes scanned it once, twice, then she tossed it into the fire. "What did it say?" Elia asked. She didn't answer at first, just watched the flames eat the ink, then Mercer's heading east. Elia's jaw clenched. Why she stared into the dark. "He's looking for someone." "You?" She shook her head. "Not anymore." Then who she looked toward the fire. Her face reflected there, scarred, shadowed, silent. A man. The flames didn't crackle. They hissed. Elia didn't press. Not yet. The canyon that doesn't forgive. They crossed into canyon country just after the first frost. The air grew sharper, crueler, the kind that cut into your lungs like regret. The land stopped pretending to care. Paths vanished. Ravines opened underfoot without warning. The cliffs bled red when it rained, and even the birds stopped calling. Everything here had been broken once and never healed right. Elia kept his rifle close hand, always on the worn leather grip. He didn't sleep full nights anymore. Neither did Sal. Fault ran tighter circles, nose to the wind ears, flat and twitching like he could smell something rising from the stones. There was no language for what hunted them now. No bounty, no grudge, just Mercer. They didn't speak his name aloud, not often. Saying it was like spitting in church. Elia had crossed Mercer once years ago back in the Utah salt country. Mercer ran guns from an old Mormon slaughterhouse turned fort. Charged tax on every bullet, left behind the ones who couldn't pay. Elia still remembered the woman Mercer hanged for stealing a pocket knife. Her child had watched it happen. That was the first time Elia killed a man without collecting a reward. But Mercer wasn't chasing him this time. He was chasing her, and Alicia didn't yet know why. The birch bark and the blood name. They followed dead rails through a valley once carved by trains now abandoned to rust and ghosts. The tracks were warped, buckled, scorched black from an explosion no one remembered anymore. Half a train lay on its side roof, peeled like a sardine can. Inside, nothing but bones and forgotten iron. They made camp beneath it, wind howling through broken windows. Sal sat cross-legged with a piece of birch bark carving lines into the surface with the tip of her blade. Elia watched the fire, counted the notches. 5 thin, shallow ones. One deep almost through the wood. He pointed. Mercer. She nodded. He didn't ask again, just waited. Finally, she spoke, voice soft and iron. I killed his son. Elia didn't flinch. Why, he thought the name Mercer gave him rights, she said. He was 19, took a girl from my camp. One of mine. Elia didn't ask what she meant by mine. He didn't need to. I tracked him. 3 days. Found him drunk in a mining tent, bragging to a bootlicker about what he did. I shot him in the spine. Watched him crawl. Then I slit his throat. Her voice didn't crack. Her face didn't twist. She wasn't confessing. She was declaring. I killed the 2 men Mercer sent after. Then I ran. She looked at Elia. Then I kept running. Elia nodded once, then said low, then we stop. The narrow way. Up they moved at night, now climbing an old Ute trail through the rocks, a path so narrow it felt carved by whispers. Antlers marked the entrance. Towers of stone rose like watchmen. Elia led rifle wrapped in cloth to avoid the glint. Sal followed quieter than breath. Fault padded behind them, tense alert. Every step had to count. By dawn they reached the ridge. Below, mist rolled through a pine valley. Fires flickered like heartbeat pulses at its center. Dozens of them. Camp spread wide and careful. Patrols moved in rhythm, rifles across backs, boots marching like clock ticks. And at the heart of it all, Mercer's convoy. Guarded, fortified. Elia counted men, counted rifles, watched rotations, slept in short bursts. Sal didn't sleep at all. On the 3rd day, a new wagon rolled in, heavily guarded wheels creaking. Crates marked with the emblem of the Federal Mint. Gold, he whispered. She nodded. They moved tomorrow. That night they laid the charges. Sal had taken the dynamite from the wrecked train days earlier, carried it like a sacred relic. Elia rigged a fuse from soaked cloth and copper wire. They buried it under the trail's narrowest bend, where any wagon would have to pass. Looking down at the flickering camp, Elia said, "You sure Sal's fingers hovered near the fuse?" "No," she said. "But I'm done being chased." Then she lit it. The canyon that doesn't forgive. They crossed into canyon country just after the first frost. The air grew sharper, crueler, the kind that cut into your lungs like regret. The land stopped pretending to care. Paths vanished. Ravines opened underfoot without warning. The cliffs bled red when it rained, and even the birds stopped calling. Everything here had been broken once and never healed right. Elia kept his rifle close hand, always on the worn leather grip. He didn't sleep full nights anymore. Neither did Sal. Fault ran tighter circles, nose to the wind ears, flat and twitching like he could smell something rising from the stones. There was no language for what hunted them now. No bounty, no grudge, just Mercer. They didn't speak his name aloud, not often. Saying it was like spitting in church. Elia had crossed Mercer once years ago, back in the Utah salt country. Mercer ran guns from an old Mormon slaughterhouse turned fort. Charged tax on every bullet, left behind the ones who couldn't pay. Elia still remembered the woman Mercer hanged for stealing a pocket knife. Her child had watched it happen. That was the first time Elia killed a man without collecting a reward. But Mercer wasn't chasing him this time. He was chasing her. And Elia didn't yet know why. The birch bark and the blood name. They followed dead rails through a valley once carved by trains, now abandoned to rust and ghosts. The tracks were warped, buckled, scorched black from an explosion no one remembered anymore. Half a train lay on its side roof, peeled like a sardine can. Inside, nothing but bones and forgotten iron. They made camp beneath it, wind howling through broken windows. Sal sat cross-legged with a piece of birch bark carving lines into the surface with the tip of her blade. Elia watched the fire, counted the notches. 5 thin, shallow ones. 1 deep almost through the wood. He pointed. Mercer, I nodded. He didn't ask again, just waited. Finally she spoke, voice soft and iron. I killed his son. Elia didn't flinch. Why he thought the name Mercer gave him rights, she said. He was 19, took a girl from my camp, one of mine. Elia didn't ask what she meant by mine. He didn't need to. I tracked him. 3 days. Found him drunk in a mining tent, bragging to a bootlicker about what he did. I shot him in the spine. Watched him crawl. Then I slit his throat. Her voice didn't crack. Her face didn't twist. She wasn't confessing. She was declaring. I killed the 2 men Mercer sent after. Then I ran. She looked at Elia. Then I kept running. Elia nodded once. Then said low. Then we stop. The narrow way up. They moved at night, now climbing an old Ute trail through the rocks, a path so narrow it felt carved by whispers. Antlers marked the entrance. Towers of stone rose like watchmen. Elia led rifle wrapped in cloth to avoid the glint. Sal followed quieter than breath. Fault padded behind them, tense alert. Every step had to count. By dawn they reached the ridge. Below, mist rolled through a pine valley. Fires flickered like heartbeat pulses at its center. Dozens of them. Camp spread wide and careful. Patrols moved in rhythm rifles across backs, boots marching like clock ticks. And at the heart of it all, Mercer's convoy, guarded, fortified. Elia counted men, counted rifles, watched rotations, slept in short bursts. Sal didn't sleep at all. On the 3rd day, a new wagon rolled in, heavily guarded wheels creaking. Crates marked with the emblem of the Federal Mint. Gold, he whispered. She nodded. They moved tomorrow. That night they laid the charges. Sal had taken the dynamite from the wrecked train days earlier, carried it like a sacred relic. Elia rigged a fuse from soaked cloth and copper wire. They buried it under the trail's narrowest bend where any wagon would have to pass. Looking down at the flickering camp, Elia said, "You sure Sal's fingers hovered near the fuse?" "No," she said, "but I'm done being chased." Then she lit it. A place. Without a name. The hill wasn't much, just a raised stretch of earth ringed with wind-warped cedars, shaded on three sides, quiet in a way nothing else had been for years. The creek nearby ran cold and fast, its water clean enough to drink without boiling. Elk tracks lined its banks. Overhead the sky stretched wide but didn't feel watchful. Just open. Sal knelt and touched the ground like it was something sacred. "Good earth," she murmured. "Soft, cool, holds memory." Elia didn't answer, just stood behind her and let the silence breathe. They built again. Not a cabin, not yet. Just something smaller. 4 posts, a roof of willow, walls woven with brush and bark. Shelter, not permanence. A boundary, not a claim. Sal found a mirror in the remains of a wagon wreck, a tin square bent and doled. She nailed it to the wall inside their shelter. "So we remember our faces," she said. Elia carved a table from cedar root. It didn't wobble. They set stones in a circle around the fire pit and left spaces between them evenly placed. "Why the gaps?" Sal asked. "For others," Elia said, "even if they never come." She didn't question him. She just nodded and started laying out seeds, beans, onions, a line of corn. She carved a small notch into each one with her knife before burying it. "What's that for? So they know someone meant them," she said. He didn't laugh. Didn't have to. The girl in the water. One morning Sal didn't return from the creek at first light. Elia followed her tracks, easy familiar by now, and found her kneeling at the edge of the stream, not moving. She was staring into the reflection like it held something she didn't want to see. He sat beside her, waited. "She looked like me," she whispered. He didn't ask, "Who?" She told him anyway. "The girl I told you about, the one Mercer's son took. She used to braid her hair even after he hurt her. Like if she kept doing that one small thing, it would make her whole again." Sal ran her fingers through her own hair, now black, tangled, damp from morning fog. "I braid mine now, not for wholeness, just because." She pulled something from her coat, a strip of cloth, red and brown, stiff with old blood. It had once been part of Mercer's coat. Without ceremony, she dropped it into the creek. The water took it no resistance. No questions. They sat there a long time watching the current carry it out of sight. The fence and the frost. By midsummer, Folt had gone blind in one eye. He didn't chase birds anymore, just lay by the fire and growled in his dreams. Elia said the dog was remembering something he couldn't forget. Fall came in hard, fast wind-brittle trees. One night, Elia woke coughing blood. It wasn't old fever, just time catching up. Sal didn't panic. She boiled pine needles, pressed a rag to his lips, fed him broth like ritual. "I thought you were gone," he muttered, eyes half shut. "I did go," she said, "but I came back." Why she poured more broth. There's nothing left out there. The winter that followed buried the world in white. They carved a path to the creek, broke the trail with axes. Sal sewed him a coat from rabbit pelts. Elia carved her a comb from antler. They didn't speak of the past anymore. Not because it was gone, but because it no longer needed tending. Spring came late. But it came. When the ground thawed, they walked to the ridge together where sky met earth and the air didn't bite. The valley stretched below them untouched. Sal stood close enough to touch, but neither reached out. Elia held a small leather pouch in his hand. Inside were 3 bullets, 2 coins, 1 tooth. The last things he'd kept from the road. He buried them beneath the cedar tree. What now, she asked. He looked toward the sun breaking through the clouds. We live, he said.